Good morning, everybody. This is September 17th, 2018. Just a few housekeeping notes for today. We're brought to you by Brave Browser. If you're tired of the major companies stealing all your data, etc., give Brave Browser a try. They're kind enough to sponsor this show. Um, Housekeeping today. I'm CJ, aka Cryptic Cynic. I'm the only available host for today, so I will be bringing you today's news. And apologies for the background just being, plain blank screen. I don't have anything set up to show anything really fancy in the background, so apologies for that. But hopefully tomorrow we'll have at least um, another host back to provide the usual setup with Google Hangouts and such. Just to let you guys know, I don't know really the schedules of everyone else, but there is on the Discord channel a space for scheduling announcements where you can check out if anyone has updated their status. Lupinit mentioned he was unable to do today's show. Wish him well. Hopefully, he will be back tomorrow or as soon as possible. Same goes for Jeremiah and Minarch. Cookbook mentioned that he is looking for co hosts for the afternoon show. So, if you're interested in doing an afternoon version of the Bad Morning News podcast, let us know in the Discord. Get in touch with one of the admins or Minarch Cookbook, and he mentioned that he's looking to do probably about do his afternoon show at about 5:30 Central Time, which is 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're interested in that at all, get a hold of us. And I guess I will get right into it today. This is from the Free Thought Project, written by, uh, there's no specific author here. Serial killer who confessed to murdering 4 women is a 9-year veteran of U.S. Border Patrol. A U.S. Border Patrol agent was arrested in Texas on Saturday and confessed to being a serial killer who has murdered 4 women. Laredo, Texas. A U.S. Border Patrol agent who authorities described as a serial killer has confessed to 4 murders following his arrest. Police say all of his female victims were prostitutes. Juan Davis Ortiz, 35, a U.S. Navy veteran who has been with the U.S. Border Patrol for 10 years, was captured by state troopers on Saturday in Laredo, a Texan city on the border with Mexico. The hunt for Ortiz began on Friday when a woman reached out to police claiming she was snatched by a man before managing to escape. She provided police with a detailed description of the suspect, including his tattoos. Webb County District Attorney Isidro R. Alaniz told CNN's affiliate KGNS-TV. When troopers found him in a parking lot, Ortiz tried to escape on foot, but was eventually found in the back of a truck. Police say he confessed to 4 killings but declined to reveal details of the attacks. So far, only 2 victims have been identified. Melissa Ramirez, a 29-year-old woman from Laredo, and Claudia Ann Luera, 42, who was found alive on Highway 255 but later died in hospital. The other 2 victims are an unidentified man and woman. Authorities say that all of the female victims were prostitutes. Without revealing details of the killings, police said that the attacker used the same methods and means to murder each of his victims. Alaniz noted that the suspect appears to have carefully chosen his prey, targeting certain types. The suspect was hunting for his victims. We do consider this to be a serial killer, Alaniz added. Authorities said there was little doubt that Ortiz was behind the gruesome acts, with Webb County Sheriff Martin Cuellar stating that police are in possession of very strong evidence implicating Ortiz. The bodies of the first two victims were discovered in a rural part of Webb County 2 weeks ago, prompting police to launch a murder investigation. The other two bodies were located following the man's arrest, with the last victim's remains having been found north of Laredo, the alleged perpetrator's last hiding place. So I didn't watch what happens with that. Not surprising at this point that anyone in so-called law enforcement would do something horrific. It just kind of seems like an endless stream of horrific shit that happens and comes out of the supposed agencies that are here to protect our freedom or safety or whatever. But that's today's story on that, and I'll keep everyone up to date on what happens with that. Hopefully, assuming he is guilty, he will actually be punished. Maybe, in some sense. I guess we'll see. So the next story is just an update on a story that's been going on for the past week or so. Has gotten a lot of media attention, and that probably results in what's going on with this case. And this is from the Free Thought Project as well. Dallas police attempt to smear Botham Jean over a tiny bit of weed, and they miserably failed. Police waited until the day of the innocent man's funeral to release the affidavit claiming they found weed in Botham Jean's home, an obvious smear campaign. This is written by Matt Eggers. Texas, the Dallas police on Thursday announced the findings of a search warrant they executed on the home of Botham Jean after he was gunned down in his apartment by one of their own. The department is now accused of trying to smear Jean by claiming they found a tiny bit of marijuana in his house, as if this justifies going into someone's home and murdering them. The timing couldn't have been more insidiously planned, as police released the affidavit on the day of Jean's funeral, despite having allegedly found the marijuana last week. According to the affidavit, when they searched his home, police claimed to have found 10.4 grams of pot, less than half an ounce. Police also said they found 2 fired cartridge casings, a police backpack and vest, and a metal marijuana grinder. The horror. Even if police did find marijuana, why on earth would they execute a search warrant on an innocent dead man's home and then release that information to the public? They, police, immediately began looking to smear him, attorney Lee Merritt said. I think it's unfortunate that law enforcement begin to immediately criminalize the victim, in this case, someone who was clearly the victim that has absolutely no bearing on the fact that he was shot in his home, Merritt added. Pointing out the glaring nature of the smear campaign was the fact that there has been absolutely zero information released about the warrants conducted on Officer Amber Geiger, the killer cop who lived just below Jean. I would love to see more information coming out about the warrants executed on the home of the shooter who lived just below him. I haven't seen any of those, said Merritt. Merritt accused the department of conducting a common assassination attempt on the victim that we often see in law enforcement involved shootings. Sadly, he appears to be correct in his accusations. It is standard procedure for police to dig up dirt on their victims in an attempt to smear and assassinate their character to make the killer cops look good in the public eye. Even sadder, however, is the fact that these smear campaigns work most of the time, as the Free Thought Project reported on Wednesday, according to police, who continue to attempt to spin this story into some tragic mistake. Geiger accidentally went into the wrong apartment, mistook Gene for an intruder, and killed him. Geiger entered the building and walked down the fourth floor hallway to what she thought was her apartment. According to the arrest warrant made public Monday afternoon, she inserted a unique door key with an electronic chip into the door keyhole. The door, which was slightly ajar prior to Geiger's arrival, fully opened under the force of the key insertion. Geiger drew her firearm, gave verbal commands that were ignored by Gene. According to the warrant, Geiger fired her handgun 2 times, striking Gene in the torso. Geiger entered the apartment, immediately called 911, requesting police and EMS, and provided first aid to Gene. At no time, according to the warrant, does Geiger say what verbal commands she gave. What's more, any verbal commands she did give were entirely irrelevant, and she was the intruder, not Gene, attempting to imply that Gene was somehow at fault for his own death for disobeying the commands of a homicidal cop who'd just illegally broken into his home is as irresponsible as it is reprehensible. What's more, according to the attorneys for Gene, when Geiger was on the phone with police, she had to go outside to verify the address of the apartment, implying that she knew she was in the wrong apartment from the start. And so it mostly just goes over the story as it has been, which we've already covered most of the basics. But again, I want to stress that it has come out that witnesses have said that the cop was banging on this guy's door saying, "Let me in." And also, a local news reporter there has video of Gene's front door, of his door, which has a distinctive red floor mat in front of it. So I don't really know how the cop can claim she, mistook his apartment for hers. It really looks like something deeper has been going on, and that maybe she had some kind of issue with him. Some other stories have said that she had complained about noise coming from his apartment, which was above hers in the apartment building. So, it could be some kind of dispute where she just lost it and purposefully killed this guy and is now just claiming that it was an accident. I mean, that's just ridiculous on all counts. I mean, even if it was an accident, at the least, she's a fucking, useless piece of shit and should not be in any kind of a position of authority where she has the power to kill and take lives from the rest of us because she has the privilege of the blue line or whatever the fuck it is. So, this story just really pisses me off a lot, and I'm definitely going to keep following it and letting you guys know what develops. Definitely has the makings of another ugly incidents of police shooting. So, the next story I have for you guys today, this actually comes from The Intercept, and this is a pretty interesting story by Ava Kaufman. Are New York's free Link NYC internet kiosks tracking your movements? Link NYC kiosks have become a familiar eyesore to New Yorkers. Over 1,600 of these towering 9.5-foot monoliths, their double-sided screens festooned with ads and fun facts, have been installed across the city since early 2016. Mayor Bill de Blasio has celebrated their ability to provide the fastest and largest municipal Wi-Fi network in the world as a critical step toward a more equal, open, and connected city for every New Yorker in every borough. Anyone can use the kiosks' Android tablets to search for directions and services. They are also equipped with charging stations, 911 buttons, and phones for free domestic calls. But even as the kiosks have provided important services to connect New Yorkers, they may also represent a troubling expansion of the city's surveillance network, potentially connecting every borough to a new level of invasive monitoring. Each kiosk has 3 cameras, 30 sensors, and heightened sightlines for viewing above crowds. Since plans for Link NYC were first unveiled, journalists, residents, and civil liberties experts have raised concerns that the internet kiosks might be storing sensitive data about its users and possibly tracking their movements. For the last 2 years, the American Civil Liberties Union, Electronic Frontier Foundation, and a small but vocal group of activists, including Rethink Link NYC, a grassroots anti-surveillance group, and the anonymous Stop Link NYC coalition, have highlighted the kiosk's potential to track locations, collect personal information, and fuel mass surveillance. Now, an undergraduate researcher has discovered indications in Link NYC code accidentally made public on the internet that Link NYC may be actively planning to track users' locations. Plans to replace the city's payphone booth network with Wi-Fi enabled kiosks were first announced by de Blasio in 2014. Less than a year later, the city awarded a contract to a chameleon-like consortium of private companies known as CityBridge. It was an attractive deal. Link NYC kiosks at no cost to the city would provide free internet coverage to anyone walking by. CityBridge in turn would be responsible for the installation, ownership, and construction of the devices, with plans to earn back its expenses through advertising. The twin 55-inch displays will eventually carry targeted ads derived from the information collected about kiosk users. These terms raised alarms among internet researchers and privacy experts who were quick to point out that nothing in life is truly free. As we know, Benjamin Dean, a technology policy analyst, told attendees at a New York hacking conference in 2016, "When you're not paying, you're not the customer, you're the product." A key player in CityBridge is known as Intersection, and one of Intersection's largest investors is Sidewalk Labs, with whom it also shares the same offices and staff. Sidewalk Labs CEO Daniel Doctoroff is the chair of Intersection's board. Sidewalk Labs is owned by Google's holding company, Alphabet Inc. In other words, the plan to blanket New York City with 7,500 camera-equipped obelisks has been largely underwritten by the company formerly known as Google, a corporation whose business model depends on selling your personal information to advertisers. As Doctoroff, who was also the city's former deputy mayor of economic development, has said of the kiosks, by having access to the browsing activity of people using the Wi-Fi, all anonymized and aggregated, we can actually then target ads to people in proximity, and then obviously over time track them through lots of different things like beacons and location services as well as their browsing activity. So in effect, what we're doing is replicating the digital experience in physical space. In March 2016, the New York Civil Liberties Union raised multiple concerns with the mayor's office about Link NYC's vast and indefinite data retention and the possibilities for unwarranted NYPD surveillance. The NYCLU asked whether environmental sensors and cameras would be hooked up to NYPD systems, including the Domain Awareness System built by Microsoft. Link NYC has since updated its policy to state that it will take reasonable efforts to notify users if their information is being shared with law enforcement. In May of this year, Charles Myers, an undergraduate at New York City College, came across folders in Link NYC's public library on GitHub, a platform for managing files and software, that appeared to raise further questions about location tracking and the platform's protection of its users' data. Myers made copies of the code bases in question, Link NYC Mobile Observation and RX Location, and shared both folders with The Intercept. According to Myers, the Link NYC Mobile Observation code collects the user's longitude and latitude, as well as the user's browser type, operating system, device type, device identifiers, and full URL click streams, including date and time, and aggregates this information into a database. In Myers' view, this code, along with the functions of the RX location codebase, suggests that the company is interested in tracking the locations of Wi-Fi users in real time. If such code were run on a mobile app or kiosk, he said, the company would be able to make advertisements available in real time based on where and who someone was, and that this would constitute a potential violation of the company's privacy policy. In 2016, Link NYC's privacy policy made it clear that it did not collect information about users' precise locations. However, it states we know where we provide Wi-Fi services, so when you use the services, we can determine your general location. Link NYC disputes these speculations. David Mitchell, Intersection's chief technology officer, told The Intercept that the code was never intended to be released and was part of a longer-term research and development process. In this instance, he explained over email, Intersection was prototyping and testing some ideas internally using employee data only and mistakenly made source code public on GitHub. This code is not in use on the Link NYC network. An Intersection spokesperson added that Link NYC does not collect users' clickstream data or browsing history, and that it has not used the RX location codebase to collect user data. Link NYC did not respond to repeated questions about the function or purpose of this code. The Intercept asked 4 technologists, including a computer forensic investigator and an expert on Wi-Fi location tracking, to independently review the code. Each confirmed that the code could execute commands as Myers had described, but they emphasized that it was not possible to determine the purpose of the code and whether it was actually running on any kiosks or devices based on the information given. They concluded that it was unlikely that the code was currently in use, as its unfinished security features pointed to the fact that it appeared to be in progress, possibly for a mobile product. We don't know why it exists, but the fact that it exists is creepy, explained Surya Mattu, a research scientist and artist. There's no way properly to interrogate this further as a third party. For many researchers and privacy experts, this lack of third-party oversight represents the most significant issue. Privacy experts told The Intercept that the lack of clarity surrounding Link NYC's leaked code points to the larger lack of transparency surrounding the kiosk's operations. Despite their omnipresence in the city's major public spaces, Link NYC's pervasive data collection is not constrained by any auditing mechanisms, explained Daniel Schwartz, a technology fellow at the NYCLU. Without transparency and external auditing of the source code, as well as what data is collected, for what purpose, and how it is being monetized by the company, he said, there is no way to verify whether the privacy policy is working to protect users' data. A few hours after The Intercept contacted Link NYC for comment, the company demanded that GitHub remove Myers' copy of its code due to copyright violations. As Link NYC expands across the globe, Intersection has unveiled plans for kiosks in Philadelphia, Toronto, and the UK. So too does the scope of the concerns surrounding it. Shahid Buttar, the EFF's Director of Grassroots Advocacy, has warned of the possibility of mission creep, that is, the expansion of Link NYC's uses beyond its stated purpose to provide free Wi-Fi. There's no reason to presume that a current statement of policy will constrain the consortium of the future, Buttar said. Link NYC's current privacy policy already shows that the company sweeps up enormous amounts of sensitive data. When kiosk users register for Link NYC and submit their email addresses, CityBridge retains the right to collect information about what websites they visit, how long they linger on a web page, and what they click on. The company also collects from all users MAC address, anonymized IP address, browser type and version, time zone setting, browser plugin types and versions, operating system and platform, device type, and other device identifiers. Link NYC's privacy policy classifies this information as technical rather than personal data. It may occasionally supplement anonymized technical information we collect from you with information collected by third parties. Third parties may include advertising partners or other providers that help us understand our users. This distinction, privacy experts say, ignores the fact that device identifiers, even when anonymized, provide more than enough information to tell advertisers, law enforcement, or malefactors who we are, since most phones and computers are used by the individuals who own them. Knowing that a device has been in multiple locations along with the history of the Wi-Fi networks it has visited can provide enough information for someone to find out where individuals live, work, commute, shop, and so on. A recent Associated Press investigation found that many Google services for Android devices and iPhones were storing location data even if users had turned on a privacy setting to prevent Google from doing so. According to privacy watchdogs, the rollout of the kiosk's cameras have shown how the mission has already expanded beyond its initial purview. In 2016, Link NYC disclosed that the kiosks may contain cameras. By 2017, the cameras were operational. Link NYC's privacy policy states that cameras do not keep video records for more than 7 days and that the camera footage is used to improve the services. But opting out is not an option. Just by walking down the block, it is possible to be swept into its audio or video feeds, which can capture a nearly 360-degree view of their surroundings. Civil liberties experts have concerns about the circumstances under which CityBridge will share its ongoing taping with law enforcement. What's more, according to documents obtained by Recode Sidewalk Labs, is selling kiosks to other cities that will be able to monitor pedestrian, bike, and car traffic, track passing wireless devices, listen to street noise, and use the kiosk's built-in video cameras to identify abandoned packages. Intersection's chief innovation officer told MIT Tech Review that it was considering upgrading kiosks to support augmented reality and autonomous vehicles. The NYCLU and EFF stated that the ambiguity surrounding Meyer's discovery of the code underscores the need for community-driven initiatives to protect the privacy and civil liberties of users. As EFF has noted, there are no means for New Yorkers to participate in decisions about how data from Link NYC kiosks will be used, with whom they will be shared, for how long they will be retained, or whether the parameters under which they are initially collected might expand in the future. In response to Meyer's findings, Rethink Link NYC is calling for third-party oversight to confirm that the company's software does what it says it does. The New York City Mayor's office did not respond to a request for comment on the calls for auditing and stronger oversight. We don't know if it's being held to its standards because there is so much opacity and not enough transparency surrounding the system, explained Buttar. There needs to be some designated processes with public accountability, and participation before the kiosk system and private organizations that constitute the consortium can propose changes unilaterally on millions of users. Alright, so I will be posting the links from the show in the description following the show, just to let you guys know if you want to check these articles out because they are very interesting and there's a lot to them. There's a lot to unpack there. Um, Summarize it, New York City is rolling out some kind of kiosk that they claim is just to give people free Wi-Fi, but of course, anything involving technology these days is a two-way mirror in a way. As it says, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. And so, just like Google and Facebook and all these sites, it's a way for New York City to basically take people's information and use it as another advertising, revenue source. And that's not even like the worst potential thing that could happen. Of course, it can just become kind of a surveillance mechanism similar to what's already being implemented in places like the UK and some US cities that just have tons of cameras everywhere. Police and whoever can find practically anything that happens outside in public on the streets because there's just cameras set up everywhere. And, it sounds like this is leading into something similar. And I find that really unnerving. And that things like that are reasons why I'm not really a fan of New York City. Growing up, I always thought, oh, I'd like to visit New York one day. And, you grow up with all the cultural references and all of this hype around New York City being this, awesome place, the greatest city in the world, and this and that, especially at least the greatest city in the US. And, I guess a lot of kids, at least myself, grew up hearing about it all the time and wanting to visit it one day. But frankly, over the years, as I've heard more and more of these stories coming out of New York, I feel like I don't want to visit it at all. Um, it's not a place that I'd be really comfortable with, given all the police state type shit they have going on. Things like this are just the latest in the string of stuff they have, on top of just their police force being like one of the largest militaries in the world. If you compare the size of the NYPD to militaries of countries across the world, it's like one of the top five just in size and in amount of money spent on it. And you can't have any kind of police force that big that's not going to be corrupt as hell and willing to take away your civil liberties at a moment's notice, as we've seen happen in all of these so-called, terrorist scares and security crises, where they just will go around demanding people comply with their searches, without any kind of warrant, similar to martial law basically being declared in Boston during the Boston bombing back in 2013, I believe that was, when they just went door to door searching people's homes. And they get away with doing all that because of, these so called national security things, you know. And, not to sound like a total kook, I don't know what you guys think. You can let me know in the comments if you want, but, I find a lot of these instances of terrorism to be very suspicious in the first place. I think they're very convenient ways for the government to assert its authority, and it shows you how little your supposed civil rights or constitutional rights really mean to the government, where they just will use any excuse um, to come in and take away your rights, search your home, search your property, confiscate your property. I mean, who knows what. So kiosks like this, I mean, I certainly would not be using them in any city, but especially not in New York City. Um, at the very least, your data is just going to be shared through another system, pimping you out as for ad revenue for the city of New York, I guess. And I love how after someone found this code that they supposedly posted to the internet by accident, and the spokesman for this Link NYC thing, comes out and says, "Oh, well, that was just something we were testing. Doesn't mean anything." I mean, of course, they're gonna say that, you know, but as the privacy advocates in the article say, even if they don't start out doing nefarious shit, there's nothing that stops them from deciding later on, hey, we want to incorporate more surveillance um, into this, and most people who get hooked on using it will probably not even notice or care. And I think that's the major concern, is that even if they start out benign and are just a hotspot, essentially some kind of free Wi-Fi hotspot throughout the city, you know it's a good way to get people hooked on the service, and once they're hooked on it, they can go ahead and use their data in more and more ways that probably are grave violations of their civil liberties. So I'm going to keep an eye on that story and see what happens with all of that. Looks like it's gonna roll out soon, and there's just a couple groups calling for more transparency, but we know how that goes. Usually not very well for those of us who are being spied upon. So let me know in the comments if you guys have any thoughts on all that. Let's see, comments from Finian. Greetings. Hey Finian, good to see you. Danielle says New York was different before all this crap. Yeah, I definitely think so. Just based on what I've heard, I've never um, really visited the city, but just reading stories about it, it seems like it's gotten way worse in more recent years. I mean, of course, post 9/11, that was definitely the turning point for New York, as well as the U.S. as a whole, as well as beyond the U.S. Even I have memories of pre 9/11 airplane travel, and it was nothing like it is today. I'm like one of the youngest people to have any memory of life before 9/11. I was 10 years old when 9/11 happened, and I kind of feel grateful in a way to even have known the world prior to 9/11, because everything since then has just gone so downhill. And I met someone who was like 19 or 20 years old recently, and she was about 4 years old when 9/11 happened, and I overheard her talking about how she learned about 9/11 at school, and through history class and all of that, and that just disturbs the hell out of me. It's like I don't want to even know what kind of crap the public schools, and most private schools probably are pushing about the 9/11, narrative, probably just pushing the complete garbage that is the official story that makes absolutely no sense. If anyone has any brain cell that functions in their mind at all, um, 9/11 is just a complete ridiculous story, and at least I'm old enough to know, to have been aware on 9/11 and kind of see things for myself, and not have to learn about all of it after the fact. Um, let's see. Fiend says videos laggy. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know how to turn my camera off. I'm sorry about that. Um, I'm pretty limited on technology here. So apologies for the unconventional format today. I'm the only available host, and I'm not able to use Google Hangouts the way we usually do on the show. And so I'm kind of just running through the app on my phone, and I just have the camera. I have the outward facing camera on because I'm not a fan of putting my face out there for the NSA and everyone to see. So apologies for that. But yeah, I mean, hopefully tomorrow we will have at least another host to be here, and we'll get back to our normal format. So thank you guys for bearing with me today. Daniel Hatfield says, I was teaching school to kids the age you were on 9/11. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could just talk about that for a little bit. I just remember being 10 years old, went to school that morning. I was living in California at the time, so we were 3 hours behind New York time. And so I woke up in the morning about maybe 6 a.m. and my mom was watching, the TV news. And, of course, the towers were on there. I think at least one of the towers, or maybe both, had already collapsed by the time I even woke up. And no one. I didn't really understand what was going on, of course, being 10 years old. But um, I still went after that happening in the morning, and school, of course, these big screen TVs, and we just watched that all day. And I don't recall getting any kind of context or anything from the teachers. I don't really recall them saying too much. They just kind of had the TV on, and we were all gathered around it for most of the day. I think we might have gotten out of school early, probably. I mean, I just remember everyone was like panicking, and a lot of schools just sent kids home early. A lot of places of employ their employees home, including my mom's place of employment, sent her home early, and so she came to pick me up from school, which she normally didn't do because she was normally at work until 6 p.m. or whatever. And so anyway, that was kind of a tangent to start talking about 9/11 again. But I just all of this is just to say that I trust NYC very much, and I would just feel uncomfortable just knowing that my individual liberties are just there to be stepped on by them, and they don't really give a shit. But I'm, not to say people there are, all bad or whatever. And I'm sure there's some, interesting things to see there and whatnot. But it's just not a place fond of at this point. Let's see. Finian says, saw the field from Flight 93 on the news when one of my kids was watching. Sorry about that. I asked them, do you see a plane or parts of one? News on the TV from the anniversary. Do you remember seeing the live news coverage of the Pentagon right after it happened? I watched eyes, no signs of debris anywhere. Even the reporter thought it was strange that he couldn't see any plane parts. That's a good point, Finian. Yeah, I don't recall seeing footage of the Pentagon or the Flight 77 on the day of 9/11. As a kid, I only heard about them much later when I started to wake up and see all of this as it is. Um, yeah, going back years later and seeing the footage that the mainstream media had on the Pentagon was just crazy because there's nothing you see there. There's no plane parts, and the damage overall was pretty minor considering the story that a plane hit it. I mean, there was really not much damage and relatively few deaths compared to what one would expect from something that major happening. That's just another one of those suspicious things. And same goes for Flight 77. Um, but we can get into that more later. All right, I have another bad news article to share with you guys. He'll be so kind. This is regarding Israel. This comes from mintpressnews.com, written by Whitney Webb. After cutting all UNWRA humanitarian aid, U.S. to award Israel with 3.3 billion a year in military aid. All right. Washington, a massive spending bill which would deliver $3.3 billion in military aid to Israel over the next year passed the House on Wednesday under cover of a media blackout. The U.S. Senate had passed a different version of the same bill in early August, a vote that also went largely unreported. Now, after the House's passage of a slightly altered version of the Senate's spending bill, officially titled the Ilyana Ros-Lehtinen United States-Israel Security Assistance Authorization Act of 2018. All that remains is for the two chambers of Congress to reconcile their versions before the product is sent to President Trump's desk to be signed into law. According to Scopus Labs, the bill now has a 90% chance of being enacted. If enacted, the bill will be the largest aid package in American history. As Mint Press previously reported, 3.3 billion was supposed to be the annual limit for U.S. military aid to Israel. However, the figure is actually set to be higher this year as a result of Congress's recent passage of a massive $716 billion defense bill that provides an additional $550 million in U.S. aid for Israeli missile defense systems. That defense bill also authorizes an additional $1 billion for U.S. weapons stockpiles in Israel. Furthermore, the $3.3 billion in annual aid is set to continue for the next decade based on the current text of the bill and the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding between Israel and the Obama administration, totaling over $38 billion over the next decade when accounting for annual military aid and annual aid given specifically to fund Israeli missile defense. That startling figure roughly equates to $23,000 for every Jewish family living in Israel. In addition to the massive sum the legislation would give to the Israeli military, the bill would also mandate that NASA closely cooperate with the Israel Space Agency, despite the latter's history of espionage targeting NASA. The massive amount of aid the U.S. government is set to give Israel comes amid Israel's unprecedented crackdown on unarmed protesters in the Gaza Strip and the looming Israeli military operation aimed at conquering the Palestinian enclave. The aid package's imminent package is also set to coincide with efforts to annex the vast majority of Palestine's West Bank, which has been militarily occupied by Israel since 1967. As Mint Press noted in a previous report, such grave violations of human rights would not normally prevent the U.S. government from providing aid to Israel, given that the Leahy laws enable the U.S. to withhold military assistance from units and individuals in foreign security forces if they have committed a gross violation of human rights. However, the U.S. government, particularly under the rabidly pro-Israel administration of President Trump, which just last week cut all funding for Palestinian humanitarian relief through UNRWA, has consistently shown that it is willing to bend the rules for Israel. The $3.3 billion military aid package was only one of the bills passed by the House that is set to benefit Israel. Another bill, which has also been largely overlooked, would seek to create a special government envoy tasked with ensuring and criticism of Israel worldwide. According to the text of the bill, officially titled the Special Envoy to Monitor and Combat Anti-Semitism Act of 2017, The envoy would serve as the primary advisor to and coordinate efforts across the United States government relating to monitoring and combating anti Semitism and anti Semitic incitement that occur in foreign countries, and have the rank of ambassador. Only 2 members of the House voted against the bill, Representative Justin Amash and Representative Jerry McNerney. While an effort to combat anti-Semitism is a noble cause, the recent endorsements of a controversial definition of the term by Congress, which defines certain criticisms of the State of Israel as anti-Semitic, makes it likely that any envoy appointed to this position would be focused on clamping down on domestic and international criticisms of the Israeli government. Given the potential dangers that such a position could pose to free speech, not just in the US but abroad, it is surprising that this bill's passage by an overwhelming majority received next to no media attention. Yet, in light of the media blackout also surrounding the imminent approval of the US's massive aid package to the Israeli military, it is perhaps not so surprising. So of course, my main issue is the idea that they always say, combating anti-Semitism, but in recent years, the Israeli government has started propaganda campaigns to conflate the ideas of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, which means that anyone who criticizes the actions of the Israeli government against people in Palestine, they decide to label as anti-Semitic to shut down the criticism. And, that's just a complete abuse of the term anti-Semitism. And there's plenty of Jews out there who have gone out to say that that's not correct. The idea that criticizing Zionism and the state of Israel has nothing to do with hating Jews for being Jewish. It has to do with the awful human rights abuses being committed constantly and over the decades by the state of Israel, by their military, which tries to paint itself as a victim when that's anything but reality. And unfortunately, this is no surprise to me, that the amount of money going to them is just increasing, and it's been increasing even under Obama. So, I mean, really, that it would increase under Trump is no surprise. And that is very, very bad news for the Palestinians, especially, first and foremost, but for everyone, for us, or for those who are taxpayers in the United States. I mean, that's what your money is going to. It's going to fucking shoot people for protesting and for saying, why am I being held like a prisoner in my own, homeland, being treated like a criminal by this occupying army. So all kinds of just horrible things can be said about that. And see, as we're getting kind of close to the top of the hour now, or it is the top of the hour, but I'll go ahead and check out any comments. Let's see here. Finian says, the whole board through multiple walls of concrete. Only one hole, so not the engine. Yeah, that's in reference to 9/11 plane hitting the Pentagon. Definitely. Good observation there. Alright. Alright, again, so just some housekeeping. Thanks for bearing with me with the format again today, being less than ideal. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be back to our normal format. But I definitely appreciate you guys taking the time to join me and to comment, leave your thoughts there. Kind of got off track talking about 9/11, but I always find that interesting, and I think it relates to so much of what's going on today, so I think it's pretty relevant. Anyhow, And Danielle says, "Bed morning, fellas. Good job, Cryptic. Thank you so much, Danielle. It's always good to see you. Good to see you, Finian. Have a good morning. Remember to screw the state, fuck the system. See you guys tomorrow. Peace out, guys."